Keep Our Republic is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. Since the spring of 2020, we've been doing our part to help keep our republic. We do it through hyper-localized civic education. We talk with Americans through town halls, legal seminars, media briefings, and other events. We know a lot of Americans have a lot of questions about how our elections work, what safeguards are in place, and who actually is working behind the scenes on election night as the votes are being tabulated. And that's why we're really glad you're joining us today. Hopefully, we can answer some of those questions. Well, Marge Bostelmann, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very honored to have been asked to do this.
So many questions about Wisconsin and the Wisconsin Election Commission. And I think I'm going to thank you in advance for providing our audience really good insight into what the commission does week in, week out. But how did you get here? Let's be honest. Wisconsin's always razor thin, kind of eye of the storm of U.S. politics, but most people don't stop and think about the nuts and bolts of Wisconsin election administration. This is something you've been thinking about for years. So what drew you to this?
Well, originally I was working at the Green Lake Sanitary District. I live in Green Lake, which is a small town of about 1,000 people. I interacted a lot with people at the courthouse. And as I interacted with them at the courthouse, I was asked to run for county clerk. Had no idea exactly what county clerk was all about. It's not only about elections. It has a lot to do with county board and county meetings, and a lot of different aspects of county government is all in the Green Lake County government setting. So as I was elected, I realized that elections was a part of this. And as I became involved in elections, I became involved in being a trainer. So I trained for poll workers, for chief inspectors. I worked closely at that time was the Government Accountability Board. And well, actually it was a state elections board at that time. And I worked with them, and I was actually involved in the technical creation of WISVote. I was one of the clerks that was asked to come down to work on how are we going to do this and how's this going to happen. So there was a lot of aspects of elections that I became involved with through the state, and it is intriguing and it's interesting. And running elections is important, and we need to stay very focused. We need to make sure that everything we're doing is correct, and that's kind of how I got involved in elections.
Okay, so I know for a fact we have a lot of Wisconsin audience members, but for those who are not, where is Green Lake? Tell folks a little about your community, about your neighbors.
Green Lake is kind of equally distanced between Milwaukee, Madison, and Green Bay. So we have the deepest lake in Wisconsin. It's 236 feet deep. It's a natural lake. It's a small county, about just less than 20,000 people. We have 16 municipalities. There's two villages, 4 cities, and 10 towns. And all of them run their own elections. And the county clerk then oversees working with all of those townships. I don't know that many people realize how decentralized Wisconsin elections are.
It is remarkable. And you were particular when you chose the term village and towns. These are actual legal terms. So maybe you can speak to the different jurisdictions that administer elections in Wisconsin.
Right. Villages have a board of trustees. Towns have a board of supervisors. Cities have city councils. So there's different governments that govern each of the different types of municipalities. Not only is there cities or villages or townships, there's also sanitary districts and lake districts. There are other things that also there are other public entities that also run elections or conduct elections. So it's very diverse. It's very specific. Like I mentioned, we have 16 municipalities in the county of Green Lake. But throughout the state, there's actually 1,850 municipalities. And each one of those municipalities conducts their own election. So it may be as small as our village of Marquette, which maybe has a population of 50 people, or you're talking about the city of Milwaukee, which has several million. So, but every election basically is run the same way, no matter how big, no matter how small.
So one becomes a county clerk by running for office. When was your first election?
I took office in January of 1993. I served as clerk for 24 years. I also, after 4 years, I became administrative coordinator to the county also. So I carried a few hats and was very busy throughout the county in making sure that everything ran well. I believed in building teams. I believed in making sure that people felt they were heard and that we could build a good county relationship with all employees, with all managers, and with the county board supervisors.
So I'd venture that we have some audience members who were not born in 1992, but it's great to have a lot of student listeners, and there's a lot of younger Americans interested in these themes. But so then, if I'm understanding, you were on the same ballot as both President Bush and President Clinton in that pretty high stakes election year.
I think I was.
So has Green Lake, if I understood correctly, only has about 20,000 residents. That county has the
Correct.
county changed much over the last 3 decades?
Not really. I think we might have lost more population than gained it. We do have an aging population. I think in all of Wisconsin, we have an aging population, and we see that here in Wisconsin. I will go on to say that I think where I live in Green Lake is probably the most community-minded area that I have ever lived in. People care about others, and I don't think that's I think that's pretty common in all of Wisconsin. You will see people who care about other people in their communities and work together to make things happen. It's very, very nice to have the neighbors I have and to have the community that I have.
I'm originally from the East Coast, as you know, and I've visited Wisconsin many times through the work with Keep Our Republic, and that expression "Midwest nice" it's more than an expression. There's just very good, decent folks, and this is often in the context of talking about somewhat heated themes. There's obviously a lot of curiosity nowadays about these themes of election administration, but by and large, yeah, people are quite nice, especially when you get into the more rural corners of your state. So what I mean, when you take a look over the some decades, what's been some of the largest changes with Wisconsin elections?
When I first took office in 1993, only municipalities with over 5,000 population actually had a poll book. Otherwise, when you walked in, my municipality, we have 1,000 people here. When you walked into the polls, somebody would write down your name and your address, and that was how they recorded that you voted. And that it was a poll book. That's what it was called. And every time the next person came in, the next line was filled with who the name of the person and the address of where they lived. And that was how they kept track of who voted. But there was not a poll list, and there wasn't voter registration specifically. Voter registration didn't come along till we started doing WisVote, where everyone had to register to vote. Other than the population, cities populated with more than 5,000 people did have voter registration. So it was a whole different type of a scenario that was going on. And after the 2020 election, I think we can all remember the 2000 election, Gore and Bush, that changed everything, because after that election, we had the Help American Vote Act come into play. And from there, we then had machine counted ballots. There was registration that was required, and there was quite a few changes that took place that made the overall election throughout the nation consistent. Whereas prior to that, it wasn't necessarily always consistent from state to state. Now every state has to follow the rules of HAVA. Every municipality does. but still the municipalities, the states and the municipalities still run their own elections. So, which is, I don't know that everybody really realizes that. A state runs its own elections. We in Wisconsin have certain requirements as to how we run our elections. For example, we have 1,850 municipalities that run their own election on election days. In other states, it may be done by the counties, or it may be done specifically from the state level. There's just differences, but they're all required to have the consistency of how voting takes place.
Well, just spell that out for audience members when you say consistency. So, for example, all Wisconsin polls need to open and close at the same hour.
Same time, correct.
But as you get
required, yes.
But as you so what else is consistent across the landscape of Wisconsin, and then what else maybe is a bit of a longer leash or more diversity that's afforded to the jurisdictions?
Okay, Wisconsin has a Wisconsin Election Commission at this moment in time. The Wisconsin Election Commission will approve certain types of election machines that can be used in the state. Those machines are also approved by the National Election Commission, so that the machines are approved. They're approved by the state. Then the municipalities can purchase any one of those type of machines. But WEC or the state doesn't tell any municipality specifically what type of machine they need to buy. So there is those types of freedoms, but yes, it's consistent that the machine has been approved, that ballots are going to be run through those machines. They're going to be read accurately. So that's one of the things that I can think of that's pretty broad and pretty understandable. We do open at a certain time. We do have WISVote, where people are required to register to vote. There are poll lists that are run before elections. We also have electronic poll books. Those are required in every municipality in the state, and people are checked in. They need to show photo ID. They need to prove who they are, and then they are allowed to, they're numbered in a poll book. There are 2 poll books that are used. As they're numbered, if there's any discrepancies, the number, we can verify that that person voted and what number they are as they entered into the municipality. So there's certain certainties that are required to make sure that the election is honest and straightforward, but it still is individually run by the municipalities.
So I'm still kind of scratching my head that there was a time that there was not. I mean, it wasn't in the not too distant past when elections were still hard fought in a state as purple as Wisconsin, that there were no poll books and there was no quote unquote voter rolls.
Correct.
I love having conversations like this because I learn something new every day. And there's obviously still states in this country that don't have electronic poll books, so it's just it's my hat goes off to Wisconsin for these changes and these innovations, while others haven't changed and innovate for so long.
Yes.
But what I'm particularly excited to talk about is you are a member of, and you've referenced the Wisconsin Elections Commission. So please maybe speak to what is WEC and the history of it, its role today, and its role is ever changing.
Well, I think, I always feel people understand the present better if they understand the past. So originally, elections were run by the Secretary of State. And in July of 1974, the Wisconsin Election Board was created. The election board had 8 members. 4 were from majority leaders of the state legislature. 2 members were appointed by political parties who had more than 10% in the previous gubernatorial election. 1 member was appointed by the Supreme Court, and 1 member was appointed by the governor. So that was the first time we had something in Wisconsin that was not done by the Secretary of State. In 2008, again, it was changed to the Government Accountability Board. That board had 6 members. They were all nonpartisan judges. And they were appointed by the Court of Appeals. So now you had all judges that were kind of overseeing elections. And then in June of 2016, the Wisconsin Election Commission, which is current, started, and they have 6 members. There are 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans. And those are the 6 members that are currently running Wisconsin elections or overseeing Wisconsin elections. So the interesting thing is, we look at it, often people go, well, 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, how does that work? Well, it makes us work very hard to really try to come to what do we need to do to make elections in Wisconsin run well. But when you look at the makeup of the board, that commission, two people are appointed by the Republican legislature. So 2 are appointed by the Democratic legislature, and 2 of them are appointed by the governor based on recommendations from the party of names of county or municipal clerks. So there's also 2 clerks on there. Currently, there's a municipal clerk, and I'm a county clerk. So there's a county clerk and a municipal clerk, and clerks tend to look at elections probably different than someone who's just looking at it on a party line. So oftentimes, if you see a vote that may come in 4-2, often it's the clerk that may be voting differently because they're looking at elections and how they know they're run and what's the best thing to happen for elections and how they look at it. So I think the makeup that we have right now, even though some people think it's maybe cumbersome, I'm pretty impressed with how often we work hard to make sure we come together to be able to make sure Wisconsin elections run well.
I would argue that this diversity of opinion and compromise is what our founding fathers envisioned. It's
true.
Really what kind of distinguishes American democracy. I just want to go back for that history refresher. So what was the genesis of these different iterations, and was that contentious at the time to change up these structures?
Well, it's changed by the legislature. So exactly, I don't know exactly what was happening in 1974 that changed the legislature from the Secretary of State and taking it away from maybe one person and putting it into a board, a state elections board of more diverse type people to look at it. I can't really give you the history as what was going on that happened at that moment in time. And even the Government Accountability Board, where we went from, members of parties and members appointed by the legislature and parties and different appointments that went to an accountability board that was only judges. I'm not exactly sure what made that happen. And then in 2016, whatever was happening in the legislature at the time, the legislature felt that it was better to change the board again to 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats. So,
okay, so
it was always changed by the legislature, but.
And as of now, as we're having this conversation in 2025, the governor of the state of Wisconsin is a Democrat, and the Senate and the House of Wisconsin are Republican controlled.
Correct.
So as previously mentioned, and as I think all audience members know, although we have some international audience members, so maybe they don't, Wisconsin is as purple or as razor thin as states come. The Wisconsin Elections Commission and your work, or the work of all 6 commissioners, it's attracted a lot of media attention. It's attracted a lot of everyday Wisconsinites, and then a lot of people outside of Wisconsin who have strong opinions. So what have been some of the, I don't want to say contentious, but what have been some of the, what's another adjective, Marge, the thornier issues or the heated discussions that have happened in recent years?
Well, I think there was a lot of discussion with regard to observers of elections. We recently created it's been talked about for a while. How do people come in and observe the elections? Where can they look? What can they do? How does that work? And I know that brought up a lot of discussion as to what's the best way to make sure that people feel that they're seeing what's happening, but yet they're not interfering with the poll workers who are trying to give people their ballots or register people when they come in. Wisconsin
You
also
mean like
has same day
like
registration.
brass tacks of a high school gymnasium or a church basement that's used as a polling precinct, and where observers are physically standing and where voters are physically casting votes?
Correct, correct. How is it set up? How, and that is left to the municipality to do that with certain guidelines that we have through the Elections Commission. The statute reads that they need to be no less than 3 feet, no more than 8 feet from being able to see something. So how do you do that? Where does the municipal clerk, how does she set up the polling place to make sure that we're within those limits? And there's nothing that happens that impedes a voter, or that they feel intimidated, or the observer feels that they can't see what they feel they have the right to know. So those are the kind of things. And I think, in Wisconsin, when a voter comes in to vote, when they get to the beginning of how do you vote, they have to give their name. And when they do that, the purpose for giving the name is to make sure that anybody who's listening can say, that was my neighbor and she moved out 2 years ago. She doesn't live there anymore. So there's a reason why their name is stated, and what we're going to do, and how that voter is looked up then on the polling book, the poll book, or they have to verify with a picture ID, their driver's license, or an ID that's acceptable, that's a photo ID, to be able to vote, to be able to move forward, to be able to get their ballot. So there are safeguards that we do take to make sure that everyone who votes has the right to vote, and no one is denied that has the right to vote.
As we're having this conversation, it reminds me that in a lot of regards, Wisconsin it's almost two different states. There's very densely populated college town like Madison, or certain zip codes in Milwaukee, where there's probably more voters than an entire county. And then many jurisdictions are incredibly rural. Dare I say, there might be more four-legged creatures than two-legged voters in some counties. So I just wonder, how does the Wisconsin Elections Commission take into account that diversity?
Well, I think they make sure that every voter is treated exactly the same at every polling place, that all the rules that apply to every polling place. Everyone has the poll books that they need to look through. Everybody, they're set up in a way that there is somebody who's looking at their photo ID. Every polling place does the same process. Although the way the clerk may set it up, it may be a little bit different. But the processes that are done at a polling place are done by every polling place in the state, whether it's big, whether it's a huge municipality, or whether it's a small village.
Well, you've been super generous with your time. I don't want to dwell on negatives, but I alluded and I used the word heated. It has gotten quite heated. As recently as the statewide Supreme Court and spring elections of 2025. And
correct.
It is, from my outside perspective, I think it's really just a damn shame how much money is spent to just the Wisconsin airwaves and mailboxes, and it is amazing how much politicking happens year after year in Wisconsin. But my hat really goes off to you and your fellow commissioners, even as these intense political crosswinds are dominating.
I would like to say that I truly admire everyone on the Wisconsin Election Commission. There is a lot of ability to work together to try to come to a consensus that is good for all. I've heard maybe 30 minutes spent on making a motion that everyone can agree on to be able to get a 6-0 vote. They try very hard, and they try very, very hard to understand the viewpoints of the other party, during the times, and how do we come to a consensus, and how do we move forward? Because the bottom line to all of this is the Wisconsin election process. And that is what's most important. And the commissioners need to they have to look at it. They look at it from a political viewpoint, but they also have to remember that they have to work together to make sure that every election in Wisconsin is fair, it's safe, and people believe that it's accurate. The Wisconsin Election Commission does audits after elections. We look at 10% of all the polling places in the state, making sure we look at every different machine that's being audited, and every audit is then hand counted to verify that the machine counted it correctly. And that's been going on for a long time. And there were over 300,000 ballots after the 2020 election that were hand counted to verify that the machines were accurate in their totals. It's, even on election night, when the municipality counts the ballots, they run the tapes, they count they send to the county clerk that evening or the next morning all the totals, and they verify the totals of what happened in that municipality. The county clerk then has its own canvas a few days later. They look at all the municipalities in their county, and they verify the totals again to make sure that all the totals are accurate to the types that we get from the machines. Then we send this audit, our canvas, to the Wisconsin Election Commission, who again looks at the whole county totals to make sure everything is accurate. So there's actually 3 canvases before we actually determine exactly everything about the voting that happened that night. It's looked at 3 different times, once by the municipality, once by the county, and once by the state. So there's all sorts of safeguards that happen to make sure everything works okay.
Well, and to use your phrase, looked at, I mean, what's always on my mind is there's a generation of first-time voters and soon-to-be first-time voters that I think are watching this political bickering and watching recent years and probably scratching their head, is it even worth my time to go and cast a vote? And we as an organization don't have we're not actively registering voters. We're not encouraging getting out the vote, but it is I think a sorry testament that we see in some instances more than half of our country, half of certain states not come out and vote. That being said, I'm always impressed that Wisconsin has close to 70 or more % turnout. So.
Well, I think in the 2020 election, we actually took the lead on the highest percentage of registered voters who voted in the 2020 election. I think we just beat out Minnesota, maybe? That's
my recollection.
76.8%. So it was the highest in the nation. So
it is consistently one of the top 5 highest turnout states. So I'm not going to attribute that to all the nasty negative ads and money that's spent by campaigns and candidates, but
I would like to say that I would encourage people to vote, as always at every election. That elections in Wisconsin are done well. They're done by our neighbors. The poll workers that you see at the polling place are neighbors. They're parents that you see at schools. They are people who come in, who are poll workers, who work that day, that you know from your community and you trust. They are there. They're the ones who are doing this. It's not someone who doesn't know what's going on. They've been trained. They have chief inspectors. They have municipal clerks that oversee the things that are going on. It is done fairly, and I would invite anybody to feel free to observe an election to see how it's actually done. And I do encourage everybody to vote. Their vote will be counted in Wisconsin. I guarantee it. Even from you're placing that vote there to the audits, making sure the machines are voting everything exactly as they should be, because they're audited by hand counts. It is fair, and it is safe, and it is well done.
Hear, hear. Okay, so 2 final questions. Piggybacking on exactly what you just said, what is the closest election that you have ever witnessed or been a part of?
Well, I mean, locally or statewide, or
be it in Green Lake, or I mean, it's certainly statewide. It's often within a percentage point, but I'm curious: are there some
There's
single
ties.
digit.
I mean, we've had ties in Green Lake County.
You've had ties.
Ties, yep, where you flip a coin or you do whatever, you do to make to pick someone, but there are ties that happen.
Wow.
They do
For
counts.
what type of position?
I think it was for county board supervisor. We had ties.
So don't when anyone says, "Oh, your vote doesn't matter," so many people vote. Every single vote
It
matters.
does matter. It does matter. It's usually in smaller elections that happen. I mean, I've never seen a tie in a statewide or national election, but for the smaller elections, we've had ties.
Okay, so last question. Keep Our Republic is a reference to something that Ben Franklin was rumored to say at the end of the Constitutional Convention, that this is a republic if we, our fellow Americans, can keep it. I mean, we believe that you are a keeper of the republic, your fellow commissioners, the folks that are devoting day in, day out to keeping our republic through free and fair elections. Just curious, who is your favorite founding father as we're approaching our 250th birthday as a country? Who, because you clearly are a student of history.
Well, I think of people like George Washington, probably the way he fought, the way he became the first president, the way he was such a good leader. I guess I just kind of default to him when I think of leadership. So that's kind of my answer.
Well, I don't think that they could ever anticipate Wisconsin, or I mean that was pretty rural country with, I guess, some traders and native tribes back in the 18th century. But thank you so much, Marge. It's been I've learned a lot. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
If you like this episode, please share it on social media and tell your friends. It's the best way for folks to find out about us. I hope you'll agree that our guest is indeed a keeper of the Republic. If you want to learn more about how you can help keep our Republic, stop on over to our website, keepourrepublic.org.